What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and welcome back to the 32-team 7-round mock draft series. And today we're doing a team that we did yesterday in a new, updated, realistic rebuild. We're going to be taking a look at the New York Giants, who hold the numbers 6 and 17 overall picks in the draft in the first round after trading Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, we don't really give my thoughts on that. Obviously, as an Eagle fan, I ultimately had to take a step back and not look at it as like, oh my God, they just get rid of the superstar player that constantly gave my favorite team, the Eagles, a headache, and look at the value that they got back and understanding, you know, the headaches that might be Odell. I think they ultimately didn't get terrible value. It's still just, you know, the loss is going to be massive with no more Odell Beckham there. So what we're going to do in this draft is not really replace Odell Beckham immediately. I will tell you right now, we got 2 wide receivers that we select with all their picks. They have a war chest of picks, but just kind of understand the direction that this team is going. Like, this is Saquon Barkley's team, yet they don't have a very good offensive line. They got Nate Solder, who's an average offensive lineman. Not bad, not good. He could start. You can plug and play him at left tackle, even though he's incredibly overpaid. He's not necessarily a weak link. You got Will Hernandez at guard. He's one of the best guards last year. That's a nice move. They traded for Kevin Zeitler, which they flipped Olivier Vernon. That was a pretty decent move, even though he is fairly expensive for a guard. He's like a top 10 guard in the league. So then you still got, you know, a tackle spot and a center spot in the interior that drastically are currently, if you look at the roster, red flags and drastically need to get improved upon, which is what we're going to try to do in this mock. But first up at pick number 6, I am selecting Dwayne Haskins, quarterback from Ohio State. And you got I'm an old school GM, and Dave Gettleman. You understand the old school approach of drafting your next franchise quarterback, but have him sit behind a veteran until he is ready. They have the perfect scenario right now in New York for that. And there was reports that, oh, they're not interested in Dwayne Haskins, but then, like yesterday, they're like, oh, they wined and dined Dwayne Haskins and doing all this stuff. I think it is pretty clear that you need to go Dwayne Haskins, and I know a lot of Giants fans, if they pass on him, they're going to be saying, oh, well, next year's QB class is stronger. I still think Dwayne Haskins is a first-round quarterback in next year's QB class, and this year, at least, you get the benefit of him kind of getting a redshirt year where all those other guys next year aren't going to have that. So I think that added value puts Dwayne Haskins like probably QB2, QB3 next season if you're trying to rank them up. So I feel like you gamble right now and you go and grab him. He's the safest, put that in quotations, quarterback in this year's draft class. It's not a very strong class, but I think Dwayne Haskins is a very intriguing prospect, has lots of upside, has a very high IQ. Obviously, you got to look at the year he had last year as a redshirt sophomore with Ohio State. 4,800 passing yards, 50 total touchdowns to 8 interceptions. I think just having him sit behind Eli Manning, and I think more so not in an entire season, but kind of maybe look at what happened with Baker Mayfield and the Browns last year. Clearly, Baker Mayfield was drafted to sit behind Tyrod. And then after, Tyrod, and after Tyrod got hurt, they went with Baker Mayfield, and the rest was history. I think similar circumstances could happen here. More so because Eli Manning's sucking versus when Tyrod went down, it was an injury, and Baker Mayfield came in. I could just see them at like week 11, week 12. You know, the Giants have 3 wins. Maybe you can just give those to like Saquon Barkley having like 300 yards from scrimmage in those games. And they just say, screw it, let's put in Dwayne Haskins. Let's see if he can get some chemistry with Sterling Shepard, some of the wide receivers I have them drafting here in this draft. But I think ultimately at 6, you go QB. You don't have to trade up to get your maybe next franchise started, which I think is a value within itself here for the Giants. And, then you try to continue to complete your team with your second first-round pick, which we are moving on to. At pick 17, I was selecting Jawan Taylor, offensive tackle from Florida. I think right now you look at the roster, they have Chad Wheeler penciled in as their starter there. Yikes. Jawan Taylor will be able to start at right tackle as a rookie, and there's some people that like to think he's the best offensive tackle in this class. Even as a Gator fan, I can't say that he is for sure, but I can't not say what he is because he was always just good at Florida. There was never any game where I go, wow, Jawan Taylor's taken over that game, but there was never a game where I was like, oh my God, he's terrible. The only thing with him is he needs to be more consistent. I always kind of felt him as a slow starter. Like he might give up. If he gives up a sack, it was going to happen like in the first quarter, but then third, fourth, definitely in the second half, he was really, really strong. So maybe he can get more of a quick start to his game. He'll be a complete tackle prospect. But I think when you're looking at everyone here, with how impressive he was at the combine, especially during the drills, he was definitely the biggest standout out of all the O-line drills. He is a legitimate first-round prospect. And when you look at the New York Giants, you know, we're going to talk about this with their second-round pick, maybe a little bit of a surprise of a second-round pick. This is Saquon Barkley's team. You better make sure he has every opportunity to make these guys miss. We saw what he could do last year with a pretty bad offensive line. Now you go all in this year. Maybe look at the success that the Colts had last year in drafting and getting immediate starters on their O-line. You think you could do the same. I think that is the strategy that the Giants need to follow here. Plus, Dave Gettleman likes building during the, through the trenches. So let's continue that. So we take that that, pick 17 of Jawaan Taylor. We now go into the second round at pick 37, and we select Eric McCoy, center from Texas A&M. Now, this may be viewed as a slight reach, but I think he's the second best center in this class behind Garrett Bradbury. He fits the mentality that Dave Gettleman wants in an offensive lineman. We saw it last year with Will Hernandez. He wants to get the big uglies, the mean guys, and Eric McCoy is as mean and grindery, and obviously I know that's an app that a lot of people might be able to take the phrasing out of context, but in terms of like just that hard-nosed, old-school style center, that is exactly what Eric McCoy brings. And I think he's much more, 37. For me, I think I had him as my like number 40. He was in the 40s when I was having my gigantic big board, so it's not very much of a reach here. It's about the territory that he's going to go, and I think there's a massive drop-off at center in this year's draft class. So I'm not going to say they're going to reach for a position, but they desperately need to shore up that offensive line. If you get Jawaan Taylor at right tackle, you still need to find your center, and I don't think it's safe to gamble that the two good guards, relatively good, in Zeitler and William Hernandez are going to be able to compensate for just putting anyone in there at center. You have to go out and you have to make the proper investment to complete this offensive line. I think Eric McCoy can do that. And if Saquon Barkley is your offense, get a build an elite offensive line. And center is a big red flag right now. They walk in to week 1 of the regular season with Nate Solder, Will Hernandez, Eric McCoy, Kevin Zeitler, and Jawaan Taylor as our offensive line. That's competitive. That is a competitive NFC East offensive line. Everyone knows in the East you got to build up your offensive line. The Redskins do it, the Cowboys do it, the Eagles do it, and it's about time that the Giants start doing it as well. Moving to the third round at pick 95, I'm selecting Michael Jackson. Scrunchy. The quarterback from Miami. When you look at, they have the comp pick in Sam Beal, who they got from Western Michigan. Yeah, maybe a little bit of an overvalue when you really look at things. He's probably would have been like a 4th or 5th round pick. They got him in the 3rd round, but fine. You're hoping that is a shot in the arm of youth and upside that they're going to get in the secondary. That's kind of looking a little bit bogged down, as much as it pays me to say with Janoris Jenkins last season. But I think Michael Jackson, again, another great man cover corner. He had a really good combine, 4.45 40-inch vertical. You pair him with Sam Beal, I feel like there's some optimism there about this Giants secondary going forward. Obviously, there's a big hole with no more Landon Collins, but it does seem like the writing is on the wall for Janoris Jenkins probably to be on the way out. But even if he's still there, outside of that, you have Sam Beal, which you're going to be gambling on that he can put it together. You got Grant Haley, who emerged as a solid nickel. But then there's just a bunch of flyers here pretty much. You got like Tony Lippett, who was a wide receiver at Michigan State, was kind of an all-right, below average corner at Miami. There's just not a lot of depth here in the secondary for the New York Giants. So I think grabbing a guy like Michael Jackson, who kind of had a little bit of a down year in college this year, but 2 years ago at Miami, he was regarded as one of the best cornerback prospects in football. I don't think you can go wrong with getting him in the 3rd round and getting him some early minutes and some early reps as a rookie next season. Going into the 4th round, they have 2 4th-round picks. First up at 108, I'm selecting Darius Slayton, wide receiver from Auburn. Now, there's no way you're going to be able to replace Odell, but I think you can maybe get a couple guys that can help mitigate that loss of OBJ. When you look at Darius Slayton, he is, right now they need outside speed. That's some upside. I think Darius Slayton brings that. He ran at 4.39 40. He would have been higher regarded, I personally think, if he stayed in college one more year, but clearly he saw that Stidham was leaving and probably thought, his best chance of getting drafted high was this season. But he offers that big playability and could help with the loss that the Giants really have no one on their roster to take over in Odell Beckham in terms of explosive plays. You got 2 slot wide receivers, two clear slot wide receivers in Sterling Shepard, in Golden Tate. So, obviously they're just going to help benefit from the check down machine, which is Eli Manning. But you have no one on the outside that is proven to give you big playability. You got Cody Latimer. You have Corey Coleman. They're fast. But do they have proven big playability in the NFL through how many years? 3 years? 2-3 years? Maybe 4 years for Latimer. They've been in the league? No. So those are just flyers. I think you get a guy like Darius Slayton who's that, but has that upside to actually be the player that can make plays, stretch the defense out. I think in round 4, personally, you're going to see a lot of Giants mocks with have them going wide receiver really, really early to try and be like, oh, well, we don't get Odell. We're getting his replacement right away. I think it's going to be better to get maybe multiple guys at value picks later on than investing a high pick in a wide receiver. And it all starts here in round 4 with Darius Slayton. We have one more wide receiver coming up. Finishing out round 4, they also have a pick at 132, and I'm selecting Jalen Jelks, outside linebacker from Oregon. He's a lengthy, athletic 3-4 outside linebacker and adds competition behind Lorenzo Carter for reps. Right now, looking at their depth chart, they got Kareem Martin, Avery Moss, Marcus Golden. Marcus Golden's not bad. I'll throw it out there. He had some good years with Arizona, but then he's really hasn't kind of looked like the same player coming back from injury. So, he's necessarily on a flyer. I think best case scenario for Marcus Golden is that he can make a healthy rotation. So you get a guy like Jalen Jelks, who had a really big 2016-27, like 2 years ago, had a really, really standout year for Oregon. Last year was, not so much. But I feel like for a twitchy 3-4 outside linebacker, he has a lot of upside, a lot of length. They like the length, which is what they drafted last year in Lorenzo Carter. And I think Jalen Jelks fits that mold and adds a lot more youth to the outside linebacker role. Going to the 5th round, they have 3 5th-round picks. First up at 142, I'm selecting Mike Bell, safety from Fresno State. He is the jack-of-all-trades safety. I think he would have gone higher, clearly, if he didn't have a poor combine, which he ran the slowest 40 out of all the safeties there with a 4.83. Little did I remind you, like one of the most unimpressive linebackers last year at the combine, like one of the worst from an athletic testing standpoint, was Mr. Darius Leonard, and we all saw what he did with the Colts. So I think obviously combine stuff needs to be somewhat valuable, but ultimately tape and production in college doesn't really lie. And I think Mike Bell kind of falls into that. His tape already showed that he was going to be a limited athlete, not going to run a fast 40-yard dash time, but he has as good of a technical base as any safety in this draft class. So when you look at the safeties right now on the Giants, you got Jabril Peppers. You brought in a veteran in Antoine Bethea. There's just not much there. There's not much behind Jabril Peppers. I think a guy like Mike Bell can come in, play free safety, can play a little bit of strong safety, can do both positions, but ultimately could be viewed as the guy that's, kind of groomed behind Antoine Bethea to maybe be Jabril Peppers' long-term partner going forward for this Giants secondary. Next up, in the 5th round, I picked 143. I was selecting Dylan Mitchell, wide receiver from Oregon, and another wide receiver that had a good combine, ran a 4.46, and he's coming off a huge year at Oregon where he had 1,200 yards and 10 tutties as Justin Herbert's primary target. I guess maybe even this pick kind of helps me out because if they don't go QB at Dwayne Haskins, maybe they'll look at getting Dylan Mitchell if Justin Herbert truly is their target next year. But we're still in the mindset that they get Dwayne Haskins at 6. And we look at Dylan Mitchell again in combination with Darius Slayton. He's an outside wide receiver prospect that can give you some big playability. And I think if you're just kind of looking at, they have Golden Tate, they have Sterling Shepard to be their short route, intermediate type guys that help Eli Manning just maximize whatever he's still good at. Give me Darius Slayton and Dylan Mitchell every day of the week over Cody Lattimore and Corey Coleman as their outside options. So that's just kind of where we're trying to address there. And then finishing in the 5th round at 171, I was selecting Armon Watts, defensive lineman from Arkansas. Currently is a defensive end, but I think he has the frame to develop in a nose tackle depth. So we're just going to classify him as a defensive lineman. He's a great run defender with some upside as a pass rusher. As last year with Arkansas, he had 8.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, and I think that he can be a healthy defensive line rotational player. Because right now when you look at him, you got B.J. Hill at defensive end, you have Dalvin Tomlinson at nose tackle. You're probably going to have R.J. McIntosh compete for some D-end snaps along with Pierre Olsen. So they're clearly just trying to build up a healthy rotation, which is pretty much norm in the NFL, and I think Armon Watts would immediately improve that rotation. God, how many picks do they have? All right, go to the 6th round at pick 180. I was selecting Karan Higdon, running back from Michigan. Clearly, their offensive strategy is going to be to run Saquon Barkley into the ground. We've already built up their offensive line to give them a competitive offensive line, but now they need more than just Wayne Gallman as their running back depth. If you're going to be like an all-out running team, you're going to want at least 3 running backs that have, either complement each other or just have that depth in case a running back goes down. And I think Wayne Gallman's not bad. I actually do kind of like Wayne Gallman, who was a 4th-round pick in 2017. But beyond that, last year they kind of showed they wanted 3 running backs. They had Saquon, Jonathan Stewart, and Wayne Gallman. Right now you only have 2. So I think a guy like Karan Higdon with his burst, his home run style of running style, can also chip in and catch some couple balls out of the backfield. I think you throw that in, and Wayne Gallman takes that Jonathan Stewart role. And you go with Saquon Barkley, Wayne Gallman, and Karan Higdon as your 3-headed running back attack versus doing Wayne Gallman, Saquon Barkley, and like Paul Perkins, who's been not great since he's come out of UCLA. Then moving into the 7th round, we have 2 7th-round picks. First up at 232, I was selecting Andrew Beck, tight end from Texas. He is your grinder. Again, we're using that word. I know phrasing. I know it's an app for some of you guys out there with, modern lifestyles. But we're using more so as a football phrase for a guy that just does a lot of the ugly things really, really well. He's a well-rounded tight end. I actually think he's underrated, doesn't get enough credit as a receiver. Pretty much anytime I watch Texas play, he was catching like a clutch 3rd down play. But really, his strength of his game is a very nice blocker. If you look at the ugly contracts on the Giants roster, Rhett Ellison with $5 million cap hit next year, that absolutely has to get off the books. You cannot be paying that much money when you're a team like this that's trying to rebuild for a blocking tight end. Where you get a guy like Andrew Beck in the 7th round that I think offers a little bit more upside than Rhett Ellison. He's pretty much the same type of player for like a fifth of the price, or maybe even cheaper. Well, clearly cheaper. He's going to be like a tenth of the price. So that's just a smart roster building decision there. And then finishing up in the 7th round at 245, we have Johanna Guy-Fan, defensive end from Wyoming. There's a big red flag. He's slipping because he had a lot of off-the-field issues. I looked into it. He said he basically forced himself onto a cleaning lady, which is never good for judgment, and really is just how could you do that when you know you're going to be going to the NFL? But if he didn't have red flags, I personally think he'd probably have a chance to go, day 2, somewhere in the 3rd round. Big value for the New York Giants as a rotational 3-4 pass rusher. Again, we kind of talked about it with Armon Watts. As far as the defensive end spots, not a whole lot there. You got BJ Hill, and then outside of that, it's just a heavy rotation. I think you got Watts, who we had them taking in the 5th round. I think more so you try to develop him into the nose tackle depth behind Dalvin Thompson. But a guy like Guy-Fan brings you a lot of playmaking ability. He has really nice pass rushing moves as a 3-4 defensive end. And again, just a bargain value pick as long as you can kind of get past the red flags here in the 7th round. So there you go, guys. That is the 7th-round mock draft for the New York Giants. Let me know if you agree or disagree with the picks that you saw here today, especially Giant fans, as I'd like to know how you guys are still holding up after that Odell Beckham trade. As always, though, if it is your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.